The truth behind the vanishing of Flight 370. At Kuala Lumpur International Airport, a Boeing 777 is preparing for departure. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is a daily passenger flight between Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Beijing, China. 42 minutes past midnight, Flight 370 is given clearance to depart. On board are Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, First Officer Fareeq Abdul Hamid, 10 cabin crew members, and 227 passengers. Less than an hour into the flight, the plane is cruising over the South China Sea at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The night sky is clear and the weather is calm. Flight 370 is then instructed to signal air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam as it is about to enter Vietnamese airspace. The flight controller in Kuala Lumpur says goodnight with no sign that anything should be amiss. 1 minute and 43 seconds later, the aircraft suddenly vanished from radar screens at Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh, and Bangkok. This form of positional tracking depends on a signal being emitted by one of two transponders aboard the plane, and so its disappearance would suggest both transponders ceased to function, or the system was manually deactivated by someone on board. All subsequent attempts to contact and ascertain the whereabouts of Flight 370 are unsuccessful. The aircraft has seemingly vanished without a trace. After missing its scheduled time of arrival in Beijing some 4 hours later, Flight 370 is officially declared missing, and in the wake of that announcement, the most expensive search effort in aviation history is about to commence. The search was initially concentrated around the location of the flight's disappearance between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. The search area was soon expanded, however, after the Malaysian military disclosed additional information. Unlike the radar system employed by air traffic control, long-range military radar does not rely on transponders but use reflectance to track the position of aerial targets. The aircraft had then flown back towards and across the Malaysian peninsula before turning right near the island of Penang. It maintained this northwesterly heading until it escaped the radar's coverage. Over the next few days, the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal was scoured by a multinational fleet of aircraft and vessels, but there was no trace of Flight 370. Like all modern airliners, Flight 370 was equipped with a satellite communications terminal, or SATCOM, to send and receive transmissions to and from the ground. Prior to departure, the SATCOM terminal had logged onto the satellite network and established a connection with a ground station in Perth, Australia. That station then maintained a detailed record of all the incoming and outgoing traffic between it and Flight 370. This is what it contained. For whatever reason, the terminal ceased to respond. But 3 minutes after the flight vanished over the Andaman Sea, the terminal requested to log back onto the network. The SATCOM link was successfully re-established and was not disrupted again until nearly 6 hours later, when the flight is presumed to have crashed due to fuel exhaustion. During these final hours, 2 attempts were made to contact the plane via satellite telephone. Both calls were acknowledged by the SATCOM terminal and would have been routed to the cockpit, yet they went unanswered. The terminal had also responded to 5 automatic status requests. In short, if the ground station had not heard from the aircraft in over an hour, it would transmit a signal to confirm the terminal was still online. This generated 7 rings of possible locations from which 7 of these transmissions are thought to have originated. The search effort shifted accordingly, and as the region fell within the jurisdiction of Australia, the Australian government took charge of the operation. Over the next few weeks, the search area was progressively refined to account for oceanic drift as well as improved estimations of the flight path. A new fleet of aircraft and vessels gradually covered more than 4,500,000 square kilometers of ocean, but Flight 370 was nowhere to be found. If the impact with the ocean had been sufficiently forceful, it was possible the resulting sound had been recorded by underwater listening devices known as hydrophones. While the timing and direction of the sound were reasonably consistent with the final satellite transmission, the estimated origin was not. Flight 370 was also equipped with 2 underwater locator beacons which had a battery life of some 40 days, and as the deadline approached in early April, signals with a pulse and frequency somewhat similar to the signal emitted by the beacons were detected at depths of up to 3,000 meters. On the 29th of July, 2015, a group of people was cleaning up a beach in Réunion, a small island to the east of Madagascar, when they stumbled upon this 2-meter-long metallic object covered in barnacles. Upon closer inspection, internal markings, including dates and serial numbers, conclusively ascertained the flaperon belonged to Flight 370. There was now tangible evidence that Flight 370 had crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The discovery of the flaperon prompted numerous searches along beaches and shorelines of southeastern Africa, and at least 31 additional items of interest have since been recovered and examined. There were no traces of an explosion found on any of the debris tested, nor was there any evidence of a fire except for 3 small burn marks on one of the unidentifiable items. The search for debris was further aided by Earth observation satellites. Analyses of satellite imagery from March of 2014 uncovered a number of images which appeared to feature man-made objects floating on or just below the surface in the southern Indian Ocean. A satellite image taken mere hours after the final transmission also captured what appeared to be a contrail some distance away from the search area. A later analysis, however, concluded it was most likely a shadow from a somewhat linear cloud formation. Nevertheless, there has been no shortage of theories. On the day of the disappearance, 2 of the passengers raised suspicion as they had boarded the flight with stolen passports, which immediately prompted concerns of a takeover. But investigators were unable to link the 2 men to any organizations and soon determined they had traveled under false identities because they were seeking asylum, not due to any nefarious intent. Some have theorized the crew might have been incapacitated by a sudden or gradual loss of cabin pressure. In the event of cabin depressurization, an automatic system is designed to deploy oxygen masks to give the pilots enough time to perform an emergency descent to a more breathable altitude. At one point the aircraft exceeded its maximum operating altitude by more than 15,000 feet before making a 50,000 feet nosedive in less than a minute. In late June of 2014, several news outlets reported that a special investigation had identified the captain of Flight 370 as a prime suspect. A search of the captain's home had uncovered a flight simulator which supposedly contained a suspicious route which ended in the southern Indian Ocean. At the time, there was no official acknowledgement that such a route had been recovered, and a lengthy public report, issued by the Malaysian government in 2015, made no mention of such a discovery. Then, in 2016, confidential documents pertaining to a forensic examination conducted by the Royal Malaysia Police in May of 2014 was leaked to the media. These documents made it clear that such a route had not only been recovered but thoroughly examined. Soon thereafter, the Malaysian government confirmed the existence of this simulated flight path, and this is what it looks like. It should come as no surprise that many regard this as damning evidence of premeditation, but according to investigators it is not quite so evident. The data recovered consists of 7 coordinates. 2 in Kuala Lumpur, 2 in the Strait of Malacca, 1 in the Bay of Bengal, and 2 in the southern Indian Ocean. The data was reconstructed from a file that had been automatically generated and saved by the simulation software a month before the incident. However, it's not clear whether the coordinates originate from the same flight session. In other words, it might not be correct to simply trace a continuous line between these 7 coordinates, as they could be from separate sessions. Australian investigators considered the possibility of someone deliberately extending the range of the flight by gliding the aircraft after fuel exhaustion. If so, the plane could have traveled an additional 200 kilometers. Alternatively, the range could have been reduced by a controlled ditching prior to fuel exhaustion. While ultimately deemed unlikely, these two scenarios did affect the search effort. If the captain steered Flight 370 off course with the intention of crashing in a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean, his motive is an even greater mystery. Zahari Ahmad Shah was 53 and married with 3 children. He had more than 18,000 hours of flight experience and a spotless track record. Investigators found no evidence of financial issues, and his monthly expenses before the disappearance indicated nothing unusual. In early 2018, a French team of independent investigators proposed an alternate flight path whereby an attempted landing on Christmas Island lead to a crash site much further north than the region identified by the official investigation. While a surface search of this area was conducted about a week after the disappearance, the underwater phase never reached this far north. The search operation has been suspended, but there have been talks of potentially resuming the search. For now, it seems, the vanishing of Flight 370 will remain a mystery.